wait, quit. No, not that one.
No, that one.
Supongo que no me toca hoy.
Oh,
Está bien para mí.
What was that?
I won't. It was a warning that you were being recorded, but in Spanish for some reason.
Oh. Are you in Spain or some outside the country?
I'm not. I'm at a conference up in Sun Valley, Idaho, for the Utah Bar.
Awesome.
Uh,
Okay, can everyone see the screen? Give me thumbs up.
yeah, we got it.
Yep.
Perfect. Yep, awesome. Well, let's do it, huh?
all right. So I'm really hoping to make this a discussion. So I'm going to present some of the content here, and then I will open it up for questions and would love to take whatever questions you might have. Anything at all that we don't cover, please feel free to reach out to me via email or give me a call. I'm one of my kind of founding principles of Clarion is that it is meant to help companies, especially who don't necessarily get the reach of some of the big law firms that I used to work for. So we're going to talk about how do you really capture AI's upside. We'll start with telling you a little bit about me. I am the founder and CEO of Clarion, and I am a lawyer and a data scientist. And I became a data scientist a little bit by accident. So back in the early 90s, I was studying at university over in England, and I had put together my own degree studying turning points in history. And so I've always been very curious about how did we put ourselves together in different kind of societies? How did the world get the way to be that it was throughout history? And so studied history and philosophy and economics and political theory and archaeology and sociology and psychology and all the ologies that don't make you really any money. But I especially focused on technological revolutions. So everything from the wheel to the saddle to gunpowder, all the way up through the current information age, and how it impacted not just particular societies, but literally the globe, and what those things meant. And so I was coming out of class one day in my senior year, and the CIA approached me to come work for them in a new data analytics shop that they were setting up. And I thought, wow, that sounds really, really cool, but you've got the wrong guy. Like, I'm not really a data guy. I'm not super fond of math. I'm really not fond of statistics. And I failed calculus. And they're like, we know all that. What we want you for is something very different. And so if you'll remember, what was happening in the early 90s was the World Wide Web and email was just coming out of academia and kind of hitting the world, the general population. Cell phones were coming on the market. And so we as human beings were creating a new kind of data that was a very personalized digital contrail that people were starting to give off. And the agency rightfully saw, of course, that that digital contrail would become more voluminous and more varied as it has since 1992. And so they were curious, what could you learn from this digital contrail about people or groups of people? And so I was at the agency for 8 years, from 92 to 2000, where I worked with literally some of the world's greatest scientists in data and data prediction and data analysis. And so I became very involved, especially in how does data reflect human conduct or human even perspective and motivation. And so we would do things where we would try to figure out whether a person or a group of people, whether their interests aligned with the United States or didn't. Could we understand their behavior? Could we predict their behavior? And then, of course, could we influence their behavior? Now, this doesn't sound very complicated now, right? Like every app, every social media site, every cookie, every device that we wear does this all day, every day, and does it very well. But at the time, it was pretty cool science, and I learned a great deal from my colleagues. But my intention was always to go to law school. And so in 2000, I left the agency. I went on to get my law degree from Georgetown Law, and then went on to NYU for a graduate degree in data analytics. So I've always worked kind of in what they call big law, so one of the top 10 firms in the world, at the intersection of data, technology, and the law. And because every company in every industry deals with data, I've had the privilege of working with companies across many, many different industries, anything you can imagine, from defense and manufacturing and retail and pharmaceutical and life sciences and insurance and financial services. And so it's been this really wonderful career of seeing how you can get insight out of data, and how can you use that data for various objectives. About 15 years ago or so, I focused my career almost entirely on automated decision-making systems. And so all of us, you hear, the phrase, the algorithm is running our lives. Well, there's a lot of them that are running our lives, but they really do. So these are these automated decision-making systems, or augmented decision-making systems, when they're not making a decision themselves, but a human is getting the output and making a final decision. So think about every time you apply for a credit card or a mortgage or a loan, for insurance, for a job, for everything that you see on your social media page, all the ads that you see, the suggestions from streaming services, the upselling is what they call it, when you're check out at a online site and they say, hey, you might like this too, or other people like you bought this too, right? All of those are algorithmically based. And so my job was to help companies design those so they were correct, that they worked, right? Because an algorithm that doesn't work is less valuable, but also mainly that it was legally compliant, because all of those applications have laws governing how you treat people, give people credit, give people insurance, give people a job, how you sell your wares to them. All of those things have legal implications. So I was at one of the biggest law firms in the world when GenAI came out. I was their chief data scientist, the partner, and I led their global AI practice. And so I had the privilege of representing OpenAI, and then Anthropic. I'd represented Microsoft and Google and Amazon for years. But if you'll remember, at the time, there were all these meetings going on at the White House and hearings at Congress, meeting with all kinds of regulators that I was very involved with. And same with the EU, the EU AI Act. I was very involved in those negotiations and meetings, and with several foreign ministries of AI around the world. And so I became very, very passionate about getting AI right. And AI right means getting it right regulatorily, right? The rules about and laws about how we can and shouldn't use AI, but also technically. How do you technically control the behavior of AI systems? So at this time, the head of the firm I was working at came and said, "Hey, I'd like your thoughts on how you think Gen AI is going to influence the practice of law." And I thought, well, that's kind of a cool thing to analyze. And luckily, we have lots of data because lawyers, as many of you know, will write down what we do every 10th of a minute so we can charge you by the hour, right? And so we had, I took 10 years worth of 14,000 attorneys' time entries. Didn't matter what practice area, litigation and commercial, whether licensing, movie rights, water right, it wouldn't matter. We took everybody's time entries and did an analysis on exactly what steps each lawyer took to create their particular product or service, and how long it took them to do each of those things. And the results were really quite astonishing to me that every lawyer, no matter what their practice area is, basically does 6 or 7 things over and over and over and over and over again. And at very conservative estimate, about 80% of what a lawyer does today is better done by AI. Well, that had some very interesting implications on my career. One, I realized that the way we practice law today, especially big law, is dead. That throwing bodies at a problem and charging by the hour simply will not survive this AI age. And unfortunately, the billable hour model is just utterly entrenched in the culture of big law firms. There's no reason to be more efficient. In fact, it's bad to be more efficient because if you do something with a shorter amount of time, all you're doing is giving away all the efficiency, and that just goes against every economic principle there is. But I also realized that I didn't really want to spend the last 10 years of my career trying to save a sinking ship, because I realized the opposite was also true, that if you took this powerful, transformative, almost magical technology and built a law firm completely on its power, where everything we did was augmented by AI, that law firm could eat the lunch of any other law firm in the world. And so I took my core team and we formed Clarion a couple of years ago, and we are an AI only law firm. Like an AI, that's all we do. And so we give AI legal advice, which is fun because the law is like all over the place and nobody really knows the answer to anything. And look, fortunately, most of my clients came over with me. And so like Walmart's a client, and they will call up and say, "Hey, we're thinking about doing this thing with AI." And we talk through where the regulation is, what other laws apply. Is it safe? Can I prove that it's safe? Can I control it somehow so I can prove it's safe? And that's kind of the closest to like being a lawyer that we do. The other two things that I really love, and we'll talk about a lot today, are one, helping companies devise an AI strategy. How do they take advantage of this amazing technology to kind of augment and extend what they do? And then the third thing we do, we are literally a development shop. We build AI-based solutions for clients, or if they have technical talent, like Walmart has a bunch of really smart technical people, we sit with them and help them actually design these AI systems, because the cool thing about AI is that it is a technological solution, therefore it is amenable to technological control. And the best way to control AI is with AI. The other thing that we've learned is that the thing that matters, and we'll go through these principles, is that translating the words of a law or guidance or principles into engineering specifications that you then build into a system that control that system, and then also spit out these evidentiary artifacts of compliance with whatever industry you're in. That is the secret of really taking advantage of AI. So I can't overstate the effect that AI is going to have on the world. I'm a student of history, as I said, and I've studied every technological revolution in the history of the world. We have never experienced one like this. Its closest implications are electricity to a couple hundred years ago. And if you think about how much the world changed with the advent of electricity, it was astounding. It changed the relationships between just about every thing we did in our world. And this is a different kind of revolution because we've never had one like this. So throughout history, most of our technological revolutions they've affected the kinetic world, right? They move things, they sort things, they affect the working blue collar working class, right? And even the computer age wasn't really competing with the knowledge working class. It was additive or accretive, right? It made us a little faster, a little more efficient, a little more, right? But it didn't compete with us. So this is the first technological revolution where we've had technology that can actually compete with the knowledge working class, what we think of as the white collar class. And interestingly, the white collar class is also the one that holds the power in every society. So the political power, the economic power, they run the gears of most things, and that class historically has not given up its power willingly. And we have companies that are as big as nation states. These big technology companies, they don't have borders. They work all over the world. There's not a fine in the world that will really affect them. And the last time we had that kind of scale of companies in the world, like the East India Company, there were lots of not great things that happened because of that. So it's going to be very, very interesting in the kind of the macro level to see how these things are going to develop. But what I want to communicate to you today is, how do you take this magical, transformative, disruptive technology and bring it into your operations in ways that are absolutely transformative, that you control 100%. And when I say that to CEOs, they all go, I've seen all the headlines where the AI has gone crazy or done stuff or broken into things. And I'm like, well, that's because they were designed stupidly. But also, how do you prove it? And so we're going to talk about how best to do that today. So it's important to understand that AI is not a tool. It is an operating layer for how your business runs. It is the application of AI at specific points that optimize that workflow in a way that augments and extends what you do today. So we'll talk about build versus buy. right? And what tools we're kind of using. But I want you to start thinking in your mind today, what does my company do? What are the steps that it does to do those things? And what steps are probably better done by AI than by a human being? So like in my profession, 8 out of 10 things that I do are better done by AI. It's just the truth. The 20% that's left is absolutely essentially human. And so the key here is, how do you combine those things, so that you've got the AI doing what AI should do, humans doing what humans should do, and you've got the handoff layer and coordination, all the QC and the checkpoints and all the safety points combined. And so the goal here is not to use AI. Like you'll hit companies and even their leaders, they talk about, we got to use AI. Well, yes. But the point is that you want to improve the outcomes that matter to your company. And so these things make things expand and accelerate, capacity, speed, decision quality, outcomes, not just, oh, we used AI for this, isn't that cool? But it actually did something, and that it gives you a repeatable advantage. And this gets us into this consideration versus build versus buy. One of the things that we say to every company we work with is, think Iron Man, not the Terminator, right? So you're not going to unplug a person and plug in a bot and ta-da, you're done. Your AI is solved. It is much more like Tony Stark, our fictional Iron Man, where he's a really smart guy, right? He has all this knowledge and all these things that he can do. But when you surround him with this enabling technology and a knowledge base that's almost infinite in Jarvis, you can supersuit everybody in your company. He can fly, he can do all kinds of things that mere humans cannot do alone. And so that is what you think about. It's how you manage this, it's how you communicate to your employees. We are augmenting and extending the fantastic, amazing work that you do that is quintessentially human. We're not replacing you, we are superseding you. And everybody wants a super suit. Everybody wants to be, a superhero. So it's important, though, to start with use cases, not just the hype. So the vendors will come and say, hey, I got this new thing that I want, it's going to just transform your business. Maybe, but you want to start with your perspective, not somebody else's outside perspective, even though I'm telling you what to do. You want to look at use cases that are highly repetitive, or they're data centric, so they rely on data, information. They are highly repetitive, and you're applying similar decisions or judgments to that data over and over and over and over again. That's why it works so well for lawyers. If you think about what a lawyer does, we gather facts about our client situation, data. We apply those facts to the law, data. We then add our legal acumen. Oh, there's our judgment, right? And then we produce an information-based product, whether it's a contract, an argument in court, a deposition outline, whatever it is, right? That's why the legal practice is so disruptable with AI. So those are the kinds of tasks, data-centric, highly repetitive, where you're applying the same judgments. So, and you want to start kind of slow, right? You don't want to transform your entire company. And it's not because you can't. This technology can do a whole lot. It's that the change management and the psychological factor of AI is huge. when I start working with boards and with C-suites, the first thing I say to them is bringing AI into your operations is a 20% technical problem, and it's an 80% psychological problem. People have different feelings about AI. Some people are super excited. Some people are super scared. The rest, they aren't quite sure. Is it going to replace my job? Is it going to, they've got worries. They don't know how to use it. They're older in their job and they feel like they're being outpaced. There's all kinds of feelings around AI. And so bringing your people along with the transformation, with safe, easy use cases, with high impact, with high excitement, that's really where you go. And the other thing is to understand you can control the behavior of an AI system with 100% accuracy. I will say that again, because that's what most people are afraid of is, oh, this AI is so unexplainable. It does all this weird stuff. Maybe, but you use AI to do something. And you can always measure where AI touches the world. And that is where your risk lies, whether it's an internal HR chatbot, whether it's an external supply chain ordering system, whether it's an HR platform that's deciding who gets an interview. All of those things have touch points in the world, and that's where your liability lies, and you can always measure those things. So when you're starting to think about how to kind of optimize the AI, think about, well, what decision or action is it that we're trying to either automate or highly automate? In advance, think about what would success look like? What would failure mean? And it really, is AI the right tool for this task? Because sometimes it's not. And then I love this, we say this all the time, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like, is the benefit that you're going to get out of this truly measurably an improvement, or is it just some newfangled thing, right? And you want to start with lots of ideas. Every company, when we start working with them, we do what we call a discovery sprint, right? Where we come in, we meet with their highest executives, the head of every function, kind of the mid-level management, and then a bunch of frontline people, because we're taking apart the operations of the company. Where are your choke points? Where are the boring, repetitive tasks? Where is our error rate where we don't want it to be? But we're also soliciting ideas, right? And it's usually the people in the trenches who know more about where things are going wrong than the people at the top sometimes, right? And so you want to create an environment where people can send ideas up the chain, right? And we'll talk about kind of how to do that and psychologically make that safe. But you want to start with a bunch of ideas, right? And depending on the organization, where you start matters a lot. You don't want to start with something that is like your core function where all your money is made, that if you get it wrong, it's really, really, really dangerous. Like, start with like an HR chatbot, right? Like, HR gets asked the same questions, or IT, right? IT services, people, they call with the same problem over and over and over again. You get the same answer over and over and over again. It's data centric, it's highly repetitive, and you're using the same judgment to tell them what's wrong, right? It's internal facing, so it's very safe. You're not like telling people out in the world what things to invest in or diagnosing cancer, right? So it's a nice low hanging fruit. It's safe, right? But the best thing about it is you want to have wins that are clearly wins that you've already decided what winning looks like and can prove it, because you're going to design the thing so that it spits out the proof that you did good, right? And in some companies, especially law firms or management consulting firms, there's like all these partners, hundreds of partners, right? So, and universities are the same way, right? Deans and teachers and medieval, it's like weird. It's so hard to work with higher education sometimes. Um, but it's like herding cats, right? Trying to get them to agree on anything. So don't herd cats. Find a good use case, really good ROI, relatively safe, low-hanging fruit that shows an advantage. And then you've got this use case, and it's like putting out a bowl of milk, and all the cats will come running to you because now everybody wants to be in on the show at that point, right? So you've really got to keep the psychological, strategic thinking in this. This is not just, hey, how can I use AI to fix a particular problem? And one of the biggest questions companies face is build versus buy. And usually it's both. So the big general purpose tools, so ChatGPT, Anthropic, Gemini, take your pick, Copilot, those are great tools. Their general purpose, you will get, if you properly deploy it within your company, you'll get really good marginal efficiency gains all over the place, right? I get asked all the time, is it safe? It's as safe as you make it. So every company that you work for, I'm sure, with probably a couple of exceptions, you're already using web-based SaaS tools. Your email's out there, your documents are out there, right? And so if you're using an enterprise licensed version of these tools, they're as safe as any other web-based SaaS solution. And so they've got permissioning, they've got so that the lowest person can't look at the board materials. You can use that permissioning and all the things about who gets access to what. You have policies about how to use it, how not to use it. You have a white list of tools, you have a black list of tools, right? Just simple stuff, how like any other technology. But the real transformative power comes when you build point solutions that magnify your secret sauce. So every company does stuff. They do stuff in a series of steps, like we've said. But some companies do stuff better than other companies. And that's what distinguishes them in the market. Well, we call that differentiation, that secret sauce, lies in artifacts. So we call these artifacts of acumen. And most of it's just lying around in your data. Like, as you guys know, everybody keeps everything forever. And after about 90 days, maybe a little longer for some kinds of industries, that data just is never touched again, right? And everybody's record retention policy is keep everything forever. And so you've got this vast wasteland of data out there. Well, but that data represents decisions that you've made, strategic decisions you've made, methods and tactics about how you've done a thing. And so the best thing you can do is find these pockets of acumen in your data and gather them together and put them in a database. It's called a retrieval augmented generation database, which I'll talk a little bit about, but basically it's a folder. You take all your really greatest hits, preferably subject by subject, because we found that ensemble of agents who are experts in their little thing is better performing than a big agent that does a lot of things. You point a model at it and you say, hey, when we use you, get your answers from here. That solves a whole lot of problems. So one, realize what LLMs are, or what these frontier models are. They are literally the world's largest compendium of human knowledge ever assembled in the history of mankind. They are full of textbooks and scholarly articles and law review articles and cases and all kinds of factual textbooks, right? And a whole lot of crap. Like my Aunt Maud's blog on her cat, right? And so the problem is it's filled with all this really, really great stuff and then all this junk. And that's where hallucinations come from. It's where a lot of the problems that you see with AI comes from, is that companies don't take steps to get the good stuff out and keep the bad stuff from coming in. So if you pull your own data and point a model at it, then it's only going to get its answers from here. And so all hallucinations go away. It's in your voice, your way of doing things, your tactics, your strategy, right? That's how you really marshal your secret sauce. And then you build the controls around it in this, what we call governance engineering, right? So what we mean by that, governance engineering, like we talked about a little bit earlier, this is when you're taking words. So the law, that's just a bunch of words, or an ISO standard, or a industry standard, or a framework, or a best practice. They're just a bunch of words. Well, it's translating those words into technical specifications that get built into the system, that spit out evidence that proves that you're complying with whatever the word said, right? And so all of you are technical people and you understand how that discipline would work. And that's the way to think about how to build these agentic systems, everything from a little tiny knowledge bot all the way up to a multi-agent system with an orchestration layer that's running your company, right? So leadership, it's awesome to work with. I love working with boards and with C-suites on these things. But they ask a lot of the same questions. Is my data safe? Yes-ish. So it's just as safe as any other web-based solution that you have out there. So if you've got an enterprise license to one of these tools, it's going to have in its terms of service and in its license all the same protections. Your data is not commingled with anybody else's. They're not using it for training their models. They have security provisions and all the things that you expect, right? But that doesn't mean they're impregnable. They can still be hacked. They can still be subpoenaed. And so is my data safe? Yes, as safe as most of your other data. When there is, and there really are occasions where, like, think defense, or think your secret recipe for Coca-Cola or whatever it is, right? That you really, really don't want out there in the world. There are absolutely ways to take open weight models, put them behind your firewall, build all the controls and the capabilities around it, and you have a complete isolated moat that your data never leaves your firewall. If you're in that situation, let's talk. I've built lots of moats like that. Can you trust the answers that come out of AI? Well, it depends. If you're, if you're using Claude or ChatGPT, most of the time. If you're building your own, all the time, if you build it right. What I tell people, and this is for individuals as well as companies, if you're using a generalized chat application, number one, use a paid version. Fork out the $20 a month and use that version instead of a free version. The reason is because even the consumer facing ones, for your $20, you get a lot of the terms of service. They don't commingle your data. They don't use it to train your models. It's not quite as enterprise safe, but it's better than the free version. Because like we learned with social media, the famous Silicon Valley saying, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And so everything you put in is not private. There's no expectation of privacy. They can use it however they want. They absolutely use it to train their models on it. So if you're using it personally, if your kids are using it, don't use a consumer-facing free version of these tools. Pay the $20 a month. What if our vendor fails? Good question. You build your system so that you can switch out the model if you need to. So a lot of vendors are coming out with new stuff. A lot of vendors are that are old and established are bolting on AI capabilities. You never want to have your operations so that you have a single point of failure that will put you under. And so when we build with AI, we have this kind of theory that we build with modules. So think Legos, right? So you build these functions, these agents that each has a specific capability, and you put them together in different ways, and you can get different outputs. It's kind of cool. It's like building a Lego set. But in the same way, that makes them swappable. So if one piece breaks or you want a different color, you can stick another module in. And that is especially true of the modules that are spitting out your evidentiary layer, that these things are acting according to the way they're supposed to. The problem is that AI law is very fluid, and it's going to remain that way for years, 4 or 5 years, if we're lucky. And even then, because the technology is advancing so quickly, the best you're going to get is don't hurt people. And if you do, you can get in trouble, right? And so you're really falling back on this principle of reasonableness, which is a bedrock principle of the law. And all over the world, legislatures, regulators, they're all kind of saying the same thing about what that means. When you're putting AI into a work stream that enters some end product, touches the world, did you look for reasonably foreseeable risks? Did you reasonably try to mitigate those risks? And then here's the last one that everybody falls down on. Can you prove it? That is why we always talk about this proven layer, this evidentiary layer, right? That if you get the evidentiary artifacts right, spitting out the scores basically that are going to tell you that you're within whatever your range, nursing, pipe pressure, whatever it is, right? That whoever comes knocking, whether it's the regulator, a court, a plaintiff, the New York Times, you've got this beautiful story of you thought about it, you foresaw it, you mitigated it, and you can prove it. So governance, this governance engineering, this is how you scale innovation. So if you guys, think about back when Guardman's Pass, the pass over the mountains. So at one point it was just gravel road, right? And now it's all paved over. You've got lines down the middle. You've got guardrails. You've got signs that say you're about to make a 180-degree turn, right? Did you drive faster on the gravel road or on the road with all the guardrails? Well, was the one with all the guardrails. The guardrails actually help you move faster. They protect your momentum. They protect your inertia. And so you've got to think of guardrails around AI as accelerating the company, not as this giant braking mechanism where you go to the lawyers and all they say is no. I spend half of my time talking lawyers off the ledge. Because lawyers really like to have black and white answers. They can point to that rule or that law or that court opinion, and that's the answer. Well, we don't live in that world when it comes to AI, and we're not going to for a long time. And so thinking through the risk, it's not like all laws have gone away, right? Every company already operates within a regulatory rubric. They already have controls that they put in place to comply. They already put together evidence, hopefully, to show people that they comply. Sometimes they're required to. And so you're just changing. The real question is, if I introduce AI into this process, how does my risk profile change? And then how did I react? That is where governance will streamline approval. It will streamline your inertia, your transformation, and your momentum. So what does AI governance look like? Depending on the size of the company, this will vary somewhat, but you've got to have board, C-level oversight. That's where all of it, just like everything else in the company, that's where the buck stops. And yes, you need basic AI policies and principles. Do this, don't do that, whitelist, blacklist, monitor, security, the things that you normally would do with any other technology. But the real power comes in, can you accurately measure the risk and the benefit of a particular use case? And so that is really the meat of a governance program, because that will allow you to decide when someone proposes, hey, let's do this thing with AI. You can go, well, let's think through all the risks and think through all the benefits and quantify that. And if we're comfortable and we can prove it, then let's do it, right? And technically, where you do control this is with this idea of, we were talking about the retrieval augmented database, right? Getting the information from you instead of from its generalized knowledge. There's this principle that we'll talk about called constitutional AI. And then the way that we've learned about how to best control AI is with AI. And so there's this idea, you'll hear it called adversarial AI, warrior bots, QC bots. But basically, when you build an agent to do a thing, and then you build right next to it an agent that oversees the behavior of the first agent. And that's really the safest way to build. And then you have this audit layer, this monitoring, metrics, audit, dashboard. So sometimes you're automating a task. Sometimes you're automating a whole thing, right? So we talked about this a little bit. Figure out which of those are you doing? Where are you, what's the most appropriate tool? And is AI the right tool? And do you get the benefit that you expect? Here's the most important thing. Think Iron Man, not the Terminator. Like I said before, think about AI as augmentation, not as replacement. If your company is using AI to just do what you do today a little bit faster, maybe a little bit more consistent, maybe a little bit more efficiently, that's just table stakes, kids, table stakes. Every company's doing that. And what I tell senior leadership all the time is that the biggest mistake you can make right now is defending the way you have historically been successful for too long. This is not that age. You've got to think about, what can I do that I've never been able to do before with AI? How can I take our secret sauce and augment it and extend it? Not just do it better, faster, stronger, but literally create new kinds of secret sauce based off of AI. This is where we were talking about your biggest opportunity is you. The secret sauce you have, your data, your experience, and your judgment. That is the moat. That is the thing that will make you most successful. And I just want to touch in the last few minutes here. Let me see how much time we have. On this idea of constitutional AI, especially. So creating a retrieval augmented database. So this means, and it doesn't just have to be your data, but good, reliable data that you point a model at is the best way to capture accuracy, get rid of hallucinations, talk in your voice, have your own ethos, have your own kind of company personality. Constitutional AI. Look this concept up. It came out about probably almost 2 years ago now by Anthropic. And basically what it means is that you give the agent a body of law to live by. So it's more complicated. There's some great YouTube videos on this, but when you're building an AI agent or multi-agentic system, you're not programming these things. And so old-fashioned coders actually struggle a lot with building with new gen AI principles, because we're used to being typing 10,000 lines of code, man, and it will do exactly if then, right? I can control it 100%. That is not how it works with Gen AI. With Gen AI, you have to think about, you are literally forming the psychology of how this thing thinks and behaves. It will get really creepy and it'll blow your mind when you start working with these things. But you give it a persona statement, you tell it what it is, like its prime directive. You are a chatbot for HR that is going to answer questions from employees. Here's where you're going to get all your answers from. Here's all our HR policies. You're going to build QC around it for accuracy, which is the most important thing. And that, so who you are, the personification statement, and then here's how you're going to behave. Those are the constitutional principles. So really look that up, and call me if you've got more questions on that. The other thing, like we said, is if you're in a really, really important use case or a really sensitive use case, build a QC bot right beside the main bot. It's like having a babysitter, right? And so you build it the same way. This bot has its own personification statement. You are a bot that is meant to oversee the behavior of this bot who does this, and this is its rules, and this is blah, 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 right? And here's how you behave. Here's your rules. And so then you get, and that's really how multi-agentic systems work as well, is you are giving each one of them a little personality. You're giving them rules to live by. You're giving them overlords, and then you are orchestrating their behavior. Just a little bit on Utah. Utah is a really smart state when it comes to regulation. They have had the first state AI regulator. They have this, what they call the sandbox, where if you're trying to build with AI, but you're concerned that something you're doing might be, violating a privacy law, or it's making statements that aren't commercially true, you can get what they call regulatory mitigation, which means they make it so you're not responsible for if you break the law while you're in the sandbox. It's really kind of cool. Look it up. And again, feel free to reach out. The rules that really matter, that if we've passed, the state has passed, one is the AI made me do it defense doesn't work anywhere, commercially or criminally. They changed the law so that if they don't care whether a violation happens by a person or by an AI, if the violent behavior happens by the AI system, the person running the system, not the person who built the system, the person running the system is the one who's civilly or criminally responsible. Last year, they built this really cool law around the use of mental health chatbots. One of the goals of the legislature and Governor Cox's administration is taking licensed professions like lawyers and identifying what are the core things that a human being really has to do, and then what can we give to AI so that we can expand things like mental health services. A psychologist or a mental health advisor, they only have so many days and hours in a day, right? So they're looking, how can you expand that? True of nurses, plumbers, electricians, any of the licensed professions. And the others here are really more specific use cases. Federally, it's a mess. Basically, the federal, the Trump administration is very hands-off, minimally invasive. You go innovate, and we're going to really look for very specific kinds of harm. So everybody agrees on child safety. Everybody kind of agrees on deep fakes. And the FTC is focused on what they call AI washing. When you're saying, I have this thing and it's doing it all by AI, and it's really a bunch of people you've hired from India, they're coming after people like that. Let me see if there's anything. Oh, this is the last one here. So how to win. Start where the value is clear. Narrow, high impact use cases, clear ROI, highly repetitive, build momentum, use your own secret sauce to build these things, and then have good governance that actually speeds up adoption instead of slowing it down. So with that, I will, sorry, I left you a whole minute. But if there's some questions, but also please reach out to me. You can reach me at Clarion AI Law, or clarionai.com is the website. My email address is Bennett, Bennett .Borden, B as in boy, ORDEN, at clarionailaw.com. I love talking to people. I love helping them figure out solutions and public policy and education and just all the ways that we can use AI. But with that, I've used a little more of your time than I meant to. I apologize. But if you've got time for questions, great. If not, please reach out to me.
Bennett, I do have a quick question. Shouldn't take too long.